and welcome to My Best Healer podcast. I am your host, Dr. Izat Mugazi. This podcast is focused on integrative medicine, natural medicine, holistic medicine, hypnotherapy, hypnosis, the sleep science, and so many more. I will answer all of your questions, inquiries, concerns, doubts about hypnosis and natural medicine. I will also bring into your heart, soul, and mind the most up to date medical knowledge, experiences, and expertise. You will be really surprised how much can we help each other and communicating and supporting each other to help the world one person at a time, one ear at a time, one listener at a time. And I'm so excited to communicate and connect with you. So please feel free to reach out to me at doctor@mybesthealer.com, dr@mybesthealer.com. Have a wonderful day and let's begin. Hello and welcome, my listeners, my friends, to my Best Healer podcast. This is Dr. Mugazi. I am your host, and today with me, Janice Litvin. She is an author of the Banish Burnout Toolkit. She's a stress manager. She will help you to understand what it feels like to work and enjoy life, two in one. Hello and welcome, Janice.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Mugazi.
Thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate that. Before we start to talk about stress and the management and the burnout, let's talk a little bit about yourself. Can you give us a little bit background? How did you start this wonderful, great idea? And what was the very humble beginning of all of this?
Well, it depends how much time you have. So I've been around. I'll sum up the early years and I'll jump right into the more recent years. In the early years, I was a computer programmer, actually. My mother told me a girl with a technical degree will always be successful. And that was true. I got a degree in mathematics and became a computer programmer out of college. There was only one problem. I didn't really enjoy it. What I enjoyed was the people. And so over my technical career, I chose work that interacted with people. So for example, I became a software consultant, then I became a software trainer, then I started my own business to do consulting and training, and then that led to software recruiting, which I did for 20 years. And then, as you know, we had a horrible recession in 2008, and I was ready for a change. And so what do you do when you have nothing to do? You go to the gym, of course. And so I started going to the gym every day. I needed to get back in shape. And through there, I found Zumba fitness. And I thought, I've always wanted to teach dance. I was a dancer in an earlier life. And so I became a Zumba fitness instructor in 2009. I'm still leading Zumba today on Zoom. And I love it very much. But after a year or so, I thought, I love teaching Zumba, but I need a mental challenge. And I want to bring my love of movement and fitness to the corporate world without simply leading Zumba classes. So I decided to reach back into an earlier desire, and that was to be a professional speaker and workshop leader. And I decided, well, I have to have some credibility and I have to have developed more knowledge. And so I went back to school and got a certificate in group fitness, which included anatomy, physiology, nutrition, and psychology. And the psychology part was what I really resonated with. And so I started doing workshops to help people get motivated to get healthy and fit. And then one day a client called and said, we want you to do a program about stress, but we don't want the typical mindful meditation. We know all that. We know we need to sleep and we know we need to exercise. We want you to do something deeper. And I said, I can go as deep as you need me to. How deep shall we go? And so to make a long story short, and I had 3 weeks notice.
Wow.
Which is just unbelievable.
Right.
But I wanted to rise to the challenge. And so I had done some research about cognitive behavior therapy, which, as you probably know, is based on the premise that anyone can change the way they react to stress. And that I really bonded with that theory. And so I developed this program and it was very successful. And that was where I went with that.
That is wonderful. That is beautiful. So you brought the psychology theory of the cognitive behavior, CBT, and you brought that into the organization's workplace. So, how did you bring that into the workplace? In what format? Is it mindful? Is it exercise? Tell us more about your protocols and kits, toolkits.
There is a mindful aspect to it, but it's not mindfulness in the traditional sense of what a lot of people think about.
Uh-huh.
So each tool is designed to help people either A, become aware of their behavior, and then B, how to change their behavior in a very, I call it simple but not easy. It's never easy to change your emotional patterns,
Right.
basically. That's what it's about. And you really have to dig, as I was being facetious before, you do have to dig deep. Now, in the workplace, I don't take people on that deepest work. That has to be done in private, but I do show them how they can begin to change instantly. For example, when something has happened at work, I mean, stuff happens all the time, minor stuff, major stuff. When someone is extremely rude to another person at work, it's not acceptable, but sadly, it does happen. So let's say there's a small team in a meeting trying to strategize some problem they're trying to solve. And someone makes a suggestion, and then for some odd reason, another person says, "Oh no, we don't do things that way. That won't work for us."
Mm.
Or that's not appropriate, or whatever the negativity is.
Mhm.
Now, that's an attack. And so as emotional human beings, we have a reaction. We might not react because we've been taught how to modulate our behavior. However, if we're paying attention, our body is reacting.
Right.
And that could be not, as you know, that could be knots in the stomach, elevated heart rate, sweaty palms. There's a whole list.
Right.
And you may leave the meeting because you've pushed it under the carpet for the sake of the meeting and the team, and you leave the meeting, you forget all about it momentarily, and then 2 hours later you're like, why do I have knots in my stomach? What's going on with me? You completely forgot about it.
Mm.
Now, when all those little stressors add up and you keep them under the carpet, one day you explode.
Mm.
And everyone looks at you like, what the heck? Or worse, you explode at home because of something that happened at work. And when you explode at home, it's completely unfair to your family.
Right.
And you're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe I need a therapist. And so really, if you stay in touch with yourself day by day, hour by hour, that's when you can begin to pinpoint something that happened. And then what you do is something I call a stress audit, where you actually write with, as you probably know, with pen and paper. Yes. Activates a different part of the brain than typing, although typing's better than nothing.
Right.
And get people to write out what happened. How did I feel emotionally? What did I say, or what did I wish I could have said?
Right.
How upset did I get? How long did I stay upset? And what addictive behavior did I engage in?
Mm.
And that could be anything. That could be, as you know, drinking a bottle of wine that night at home, eating a gallon of ice cream at midnight when you're all by yourself, going online and spending $1,000 on stuff you don't need on Amazon.
Right.
You know, pulling the covers over your head and not talking to anybody when you get home. And so anytime you catch yourself exhibiting behavior that is not normal for you, that's an indicator that something's bothering you.
Mm. And do you offer them then at that time tools or ways to alleviate, perhaps reduce the level of their stress?
Wow, that's a pretty interesting question. I mean, when someone first comes to me and they're pretty stressed out, I can't say, okay, today we're going to cut your stress from 100% to 50. What I do is help them learn how to feel it, manage it, and not let it destroy their whole week.
I see.
So when people get very upset, traditionally they get very upset, they complain, and they let all that negativity go on for days, weeks, or months. And I teach them how to process it and be done with it by the end of that day or by the end of the next day. Now, if there's a bigger issue they need to deal with their boss, that's a different matter. That has to do with confronting and setting healthy boundaries.
Absolutely, absolutely. Through your experience and work with the stress at workplace, what was the most challenges for yourself?
You mean me as an employee in the workplace?
In the workplace, yeah. If you put yourself in their shoes, what was the, I call it triggers, perhaps, that creates the stress from the first place? Because we all know stress and physical reactions to stress is just symptoms, but the triggers is something that deep within the self that bring these symptoms into the surface.
But you're sort of asking me two different questions. One question is, how deep shall I go into my own upbringing in my past? And the other question is, what did I lack in skills as a young, let's say, computer programmer that I didn't have because of that upbringing? So one thing I never learned how to do was say no to anybody. My mother never said no. She would say yes to people and then complain.
Mm,
So she role modeled that behavior. That's the behavior I adapted. I would say no, I would say yes to everything and then complain. At
mm,
work, you can't say to your boss, no, I don't want to do that project. But what you can do is say, you know, I'm very excited by this new project, and I'm having 10 other huge projects right now. Which project shall I back burner?
ah,
Because some managers are not great at project management. They might be good at people management,
right.
but some of them are not as organized. And maybe they have a team of 10 or 20 or 50, and they don't know what each person is doing, even though they should, but that's a different subject. And so it's incumbent upon you, the worker, to communicate what you need.
Uh-huh.
And we found this out a lot during the last 2 years, of course.
You know, this is very interesting. You remind me very much with the days when I worked as a physical therapist, young physical therapist in a hospital, trauma hospital, full of patients. Our load used to be 900 patients a day, and it's just burnt out. By the end of the day, I'm done. I can't even talk to anyone anymore. And probably you are absolutely right. It's the understanding of what is more important to you than what your manager is telling you to do.
Right. And well, you bring up hospitals. The physician burnout rate is so high right now. The suicide rate among physicians is higher than any other profession. And it's a subject very close to my heart right now because I've been talking to a number of physicians. But in that case, the problem is the system.
Right.
You can teach people all day long how to take care of all the self-care strategies and all these tools. But if the system is broken and people are overworked and underappreciated, then they're going to be stressed out all day, every day. And
Absolutely.
that's not a way to live.
No, no, I agree with you. It's a very interesting how you mentioned the word system because we have a lot of systems in a way. One of them is the internal systems, and some are external systems. Obviously, we all know that we have no control over the external ones, but what we actually have control over is the internal systems. And that's what I think fascinated to me, that when you mentioned you teach, these employers that, okay, you get reacted to stress in a certain way. It's not the external system that creates the reactions in your internal ones. It's actually your internal system ready, just sitting there, just waiting for this little flare of fire, and this thing will bomb, will go crazy. And that's what we want to help people with. What we want to understand that as long as you have a full power, full control, full understanding of what the internal systems functioning and how they work and how they operate, you have a very high chance and very big tendency to alleviate and kind of creating a protection, kind of a layer around yourself with these external triggers. So Would you be able to help us today to understand more about the internal systems and how you help your clients, your organizations to control, alleviate, and manage their stress levels?
Well, it starts with the manager, believe it or not. It starts with the manager, because if a manager has not created a trust and loyalty bond with their team,
Yeah.
then the team is not inspired and motivated to work hard. So, for example, if a manager comes to their team and says, you know, the next 3 months are going to be pretty high anxiety in terms of time and commitment. Will you guys stick with me? It depends. It depends what greater relationship you have. If the people don't want to do that, all that extra work for the next 3 months, unfortunately, in this climate, they can quit.
Right.
And so you have to inspire people. It starts with the manager. They have to inspire people to want to go the extra mile. The manager has to show the people that they care. And the best way to do that is to spend non-business time with them. And what I mean by that is going out to lunch with them, asking them about their hobbies, their favorite books, their movies, the children, so that every Monday the manager says, good morning. I know that Billy had a soccer game this weekend. How did it go? Or I know your mother-in-law was sick in the hospital. How is she doing? Is there anything you need? What can I do to help you? What resources do you need? Going the extra mile. There's one woman I'm talking with now, and I don't want to say her name or her company, but she's carrying by the way, the whole caregiver world is a huge bubble of stress and burnout, because the medical system is not set up to care for the elderly at home.
Right.
So this woman has her elderly father living in her home, and she's a C-suite executive in this company, in a relatively small company. She has to take her father every 2 weeks for a blood infusion. She has to get him dressed. She has to make sure every day he has what he needs. Now, he's cognitively relatively sharp, but he has those moments. For example, one day he woke her up at 4 o'clock in the morning thinking it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and
Right.
saying, we're late, we got to get going. So now her sleep has been interrupted. And so her boss, who's the CEO of this company, has made a deal with her. Take all the time you need. Why don't we cut back your hours and your responsibilities? We're not going to cut your pay, but I want you to make sure you communicate with your team what's happening. And your job is here for you in any way you want to craft your job. Now, that's an unusual situation. I wish all CEOs were like that.
Right.
Of course, there's a job that has to get done, but we have to be aware of the fact that people have a life, and that life impacts the work, and the work impacts the life.
Right, right. How can we help these people to balance between their life and their work?
By being cognizant of the fact and aware of the fact that they need the executives to acknowledge that something going on at home is going to impact their productivity and their work. For example, if you're a manager and you see that one of your team is not themselves, they're just not as sharp and productive and creative, and they're just not their regular self.
Right.
Do you ignore it and sweep it under the carpet because there's a stigma about mental health? Or do you take them aside privately and say, you don't seem to be yourself lately. What's going on? If you want to tell me, I can see something's bothering you. I want to help you. I want to give you any resources that I can, whether that means time off. Are you dealing with somebody sick at home? What do you need, and what can I help? How can I help you? You know, there's something called an EAP offering that most large organizations have, employee assistance program. Did you know that a number of employees don't even know what their benefits are?
Wow.
It's a huge problem. And so that's another bucket of solution that I can provide, and that is bring the messaging to your employees what all their benefits are, especially in the area of mental health.
Right, right, right. I agree with you. I remember the time when the mental health and behavior health department used to be hidden behind the hospital. No, and they have these doors. They're actually locked, and you have to have a permission to actually access them. Even if you're working in the hospital, it used to have this stigma around mental health and hard to even understand. I don't even remember a time where a psychologist come to our department and even talk even once about the importance of mental health, and I'm so glad now it's almost the opposite of it. It's more into the forefront. It's people become more aware of it, and I think it's truly important. When I worked as a physical therapist, I didn't really realize how important the unconscious mind is. I thought it's everything conscious, just 5%. When I realized that, I thought, man, this is important. This is very, very critical to tackle this. This is where I did my doctorate, to work with the unconscious mind. And we get to measure it with using the heart rate variability biofeedback. So the person have a tangible way to see the 95% of their brain capacity. So it's absolutely important, truly crucial for all of us to understand the importance of our own unconscious mind. We all born naturally without a guideline. We don't have a catalog. We don't say, oh, here, this is how you operate this machine. You learn, and you experience. And this is how you start to learn more and more about your own body, your own mind. And it's such a pleasure to have you with us today, Janice, on My Best Healer podcast. What other messages that you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up our show today?
Well, just carrying what you were just now saying one step further. I read a book many years ago that said our body holds on to every stressor, to everything that's happened.
Yes.
And I would take that one step further and say our heart and soul carry every trauma. And I use the word trauma loosely. Purely defined, a trauma is a horrendous thing that happened.
Yes.
Like a horrendous car accident where you broke many bones. However, emotional and verbal abuse is a trauma.
Yes.
A critical parent can be traumatic. Having unrealistic expectations of your children can be traumatic. Talking negatively and critically to your children on a repeated fashion can be a trauma. And every person, it's my contention that, and I have no quantifiable evidence to back this up, but it's my contention based on my own world experience that over 90% of people come to work with unresolved trauma, emotional trauma. And that's why there are certain people who act out at work. There are people who scream at their team members. Screaming's not allowed in the workplace unless somebody's hit you over the head. There should never be screaming at employees, but I see it and I hear about it. And I've had friends that have lived with it. And that's one example. Screaming might not, so screaming is a specific symptom, but there might be verbal and emotional screaming. There might be unrealistic expectations placed on people.
Right.
And so people come to work. When you see somebody overreact to something you say, that's a clue that that reaction is tied to something from a pattern from the past. That's why the stress audit and all that writing is so important, because all that trauma is laying under the surface, waiting to pop up. It wants to pop up at the most inopportune times. And so it's really, really important to pay attention to how you yourself react to things and try to understand when something has a real sting for you, like when you're getting very, very upset about something, it might be a clue that that's connected to something, that a pattern from the past that happened to you, theoretically from your parents or from your teachers, could even be from your peers, could be from a prior job.
Right.
And it's all there waiting to pop out. And we have to stay clean mentally and emotionally. Just like we take a shower and we go to bed every night, we have to cleanse our mind and body and heart and soul every day. We have to stay clean and pure with our emotions
I love that.
so that we can live a very happy and healthy life.
I love that, Janice. Would you share with us a small example of how would you suggest or advise a person to clean and cleanse and take care of their minds?
Talk to somebody else,
Okay.
write, meditate, go for walks.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Janice, for being with us today. So if people wants to reach out to you, what they should do and how they can do so.
So you can see here, my name is Janice Litvin. My website is janicelitvin.com.
Okay.
By the way, all of your listeners are going to receive a free chapter of my book. Go to janicelitvin.com/book, scroll down to the bottom and just click.
Excellent. Here we go. You have it. Janice, one more time. Thank you so much for being with us today. Dear audience and listeners and friends, thank you so much for being with us today. Stay tuned because there's more wonderful things are coming on your way.
Thank you so much for having me. This was the most interesting conversation.
I appreciate that. We talk from the heart, and that's exactly what it is.
Yes, absolutely.
Help create unconscious healthy decisions via the digital hypnosis platform, which I call quantum medical hypnosis. Just go to mybesthealer.com, mybesthealer.com. Affordable digital platform directly spoken to you by me. You are about to listen to your own mind through my voice.